Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Watch More Movies. My name is Josh. I'm joined here by my brother, Devon. And on this podcast, we make an effort to watch more movies, specifically movies that at least one of us has never seen before. Every month, we do a new theme of what type of movie we're going to be watching for that month. The category can be anything from a director to a genre to a year the movie came out. It can really be anything. And this month, we are just now finishing up doing found footage movies. So if you haven't caught the rest from this month, we did a film called Butterfly Kisses, Unfriended, and then also The Bay. Those are the other three movies we did. We're ending here with End of Watch. Devin, this was a film you recommended for this month. So why did you recommend End of Watch? And then you can kind of go into talking about the film overall. If you haven't listened or watched the podcast before, we do the first part completely spoiler-free. So if you haven't seen the movie, you're still fine to watch and listen. And then we will give a review, a rating, and whether or not we recommend the movie. And then we will jump into full spoilers. Also, make sure to catch the end of the episode where we reveal... Well, I was going to say we'll reveal what we will be watching next week, but this is the end of the theme. So after we review it, we will be ranking all of the films from this theme of the Found Footage Month. So make sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode for that. So Devin, why did you recommend End of Watch?
So I'm not sure if it made it into the podcast. It might have, though. But when we reviewed Training Day, I believe you actually brought it up as another David Ayer film. And I had said that I have seen it, and then we talked about doing the POV theme for this month, and I'm not sure if you might have even brought it up again or who brought it up, but I ended up recommending this because I had seen it once before. I don't think I saw it a second time up until now, but this was years ago. It came out in 2012, so I probably had seen it between 2012 and like 2015, I want to say. Um, I didn't see it in theaters. I did see it. I did watch it at home, but I really did enjoy the movie, and it is one of those like just it's one of those crazy movies that takes you on a ride, and you really don't get to soak everything in, especially watching it the first time and having it be half a decade later, or maybe even a decade later. I could have watched it in 2012, but so that is why I wanted to recommend this movie. It's also a really different type of POV style. Obviously it's point of view, it's handheld camera, but it is far different from any other POV that you've probably seen. And I'm talking to the viewers too, unless you've seen this movie, obviously. But I'm going to go ahead and jump into the critics' consensus because they kind of touch on that as well. On Rotten Tomatoes, it says End of Watch has the energy, devotion to characters, and charismatic performances to overcome the familiar pitfalls of its genre and handheld format. And then, just to give a quick summary of what this movie is about, it's a buddy cop movie. Two LAPD officers, Brian Taylor, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and Mike Savala, played by Michael Penne, which I couldn't remember who. I remember Jake Gyllenhaal was in the movie. I didn't remember that Michael was in this movie until I saw him, and then I was like, "Oh man, that's the dude from Ant-Man." I was like, when I was thinking about doing the review for this movie, I was like, we should just open it with just like one of us like doing a little cutscene, like, "All right, so the movie is these two buddy cops, right? And they this one dude, and then there's just some drugs." But like, I just thought I just was like, "Oh, that's great." I have more respect. I have more respect for this actor in this movie, like after this movie came out. But um, so, anyways, they obviously LAPD officers. They're deep in the hood and messing with gang violence, drugs, all sorts of business, and also just the aspect of being a cop. It opens with basically them having a lot of criticism on them from like, it doesn't really specify exactly, but basically like at least in LA, over LA media news and stuff, they are just known for something that happened, on one of their days, on one of their runs, and they're basically trying to come back from that and just deal with life itself as well. They get into some sticky situations and things don't go their way exactly, and you basically follow them throughout these couple days. Sometimes it skips, some time, but overall, there's a very mainstream plot line to what's going on and what they're dealing with, and you could say all hell breaks loose.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's pronounced Michael Pena, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Michael Pena, Jake Gyllenhaal, to me, definitely best part of the movie. Carried the movie. This is a character study about two LAPD cops. That's literally the point of the movie. As far as the plot goes, there is a plot. It's not the strongest, and it's not even really the point, I guess I would say. I mean, when you get to the end of the film, it's not like there was this driving conflict that's been resolved or this, objective. It is a movie about two cops, and you watch them for 2 hours live their lives as cops. So that is the movie, and I mean, I'll just come out with it. I was really surprised by the movie, and I really enjoyed it. I have heard good things before from you and others about the movie. This was my first time watching it, obviously, since you had already seen it. And I would say that critics' consensus is about right. It does have some familiar pitfalls of the genre. When it comes to the handheld format, I'll jump more into specifically what I didn't like when we get to the negatives, but staying with what I liked, their performances, and then there was a pretty good supporting cast as well. Natalie Martinez and Anna Kendrick play the two love interests of those two main characters. They're both great. David Harbour is in this movie as another cop, and he's awesome. Frank Grillo is in the film. Like, it's just a really well casted movie, and everyone does a great job. And it's, again, really a character study. So the acting, in a lot of ways, is all you have. While there wasn't necessarily a plot that moves the film along or that I was really invested in, I was pretty invested in day to day, just seeing these two cops and what they have to deal with. It's probably not necessarily an accurate or a realistic view of what most or almost all cops deal with. I think this is a very hyper stylized version of that. With that being said, it's definitely stuff that some cops deal with. I'm not saying it's fictitious or anything either. I think it's just, obviously, this isn't just two regular cops. These are cops dealing with some heavy shit most of the time. They even make reference, in the movie of, hey, if you don't, this doesn't work out for you, you can go, just sit on a highway, basically, and look for speeding tickets. So they make reference to how high stress and how intense of a situation these two cops are in. But at the same time, Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena kind of just like play comedy into that and, kind of brush off some of the stress by being so funny and comical. And it's not a comedy film at all, but it is very funny. And I've never seen Jake Gyllenhaal be this funny before. I think that was probably the biggest surprise. His character's still a badass. He's a very serious character. Reminded me a lot of his Jarhead character, if you've ever seen that film. But he's also very funny in this movie too. And obviously Michael Pena is always hilarious.
Yeah, I will say that they definitely like over through the course of the movie, like I said, they do skip some time, and there definitely could have been days that they were just riding in the car, had some, domestic violence call or whatever it was, or speeding tickets and stuff like that, just day to day. But obviously, they didn't put that in the movie.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It wasn't real or anything, but um, they did obviously with it how it was set up. It's like it, and with the POV and everything, it almost feels like they're jumping from one crazy situation to the next
Yeah.
as if it happened in like 1 or 2 days. Um, but again, I mean, obviously, that's what you would want to do. You would want to keep it interesting throughout the whole movie. But I did like the pacing of the movie. I will say before I forget, I do want to dive deeper into it in spoilers, but with the whole I guess like how there were a lot of pros and cons to how they portrayed the found footage POV style filming in this movie, because there were some moments where it was almost not POV, it was just like shaky cam, which I enjoyed. uh, I would like to see more POV movies have like more moments where it's like, all right, we're just gonna do some theatrical stuff for like 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and then we'll jump right back into the POV. Like I understand with something like Blair Witch or Butterfly Kisses or something like that, like you have to uh, really stick with the POV the whole time because that's what we're watching. We're watching it through the lens of their cameras and all that. But I did like this more theatrical style with the movie. On the con side of things, there are just moments where characters are seen holding a camera, and I'm like, why would you be holding a camera? You're literally holding a camera just to tell us this is a POV film when you've literally had shaky cam moments where no one is really there holding a camera.
Yeah,
And like it like that really like pissed me off, but and it just made made the shaky cam parts like, you know, just like less theatrical because I'm just thinking like was there like are they trying to say there was someone just holding a camera the whole time? Like I don't know.
yeah. So jumping a little bit into the negatives, not to get to them too early. There's still more stuff I like about this film I could talk about, but jumping into the negatives since you brought it up, it does not commit to the found footage shtick at all. And that's fine. I mean, look, for the sake of us doing this theme, it has to be a found footage movie. But when this, just, big picture, this movie's coming out, like, no one's saying they have to stick to that. Like, they can do whatever they want, right? There's no rules. Like, they can do whatever they want. But it does make it a little bit, made me think watching it, like, what are we doing here? Like, are we doing a found footage thing that's supposed to be real or not? Because they offer up an excuse that he's filming because he's in school, like he's actually in college or something taking a course, and he's filming this for a project or something, which is already a pretty flimsy. Yeah, let's film behind the scenes of police and their drug busts and stuff for this school project. Like, that's okay. That was already pretty flimsy. But then they almost just kind of totally forget about that by halfway through the film. And then, like you said, there's big jumps in time. So it's like, how long are you making this project? It was really loose. It was almost like a Parks and Rec where that there's cameras there and it's like a documentary style, yet they never acknowledge it even when the show ends. Yeah, kind of like that, except they didn't even stick to it. There were several scenes where there's no reason and there's no one holding a camera. There's no excuse for someone to be holding a camera. You'd have to really think hard to come up with something. Like, just as an example, the characters are at a wedding and it's 4 characters sitting at a table talking. None of them are holding a camera, and the camera shot is coming from, outside of the table, but it's still filmed as if it's in a POV style. You could say to yourself, oh, well, maybe there's just a videographer hired to record this wedding, so maybe that's it. But that's never explained to you in the movie. You have to make that assumption. And then it's like this videographer who's filming the wedding is zooming in on this personal conversation between these 4 characters. Like, it doesn't work at all. And then even beyond that, there are times where it literally just doesn't make sense. So no spoilers because I'm not giving away any plot points here, but there's a scene where Jake Gyllenhaal is filming and it's him and Michael Pena standing there and they're filming, and then David Harbour pulls up, his character pulls up, and it's still Jake Gyllenhaal's camera filming him, but then it switches and it shows all 3 of them standing there, and Jake Gyllenhaal is holding a camera, but it shows all 3 of them, and then David Harbour like turns and looks at the camera and puts his hand in it to like push it away, but there's no other characters there. Who's holding that? Like, it literally is doing almost everything it can to make you question what's going on. So I think that's where David Ayer's direction was a little messy. And I'm not trying to just pull something out of nowhere because I hated Suicide Squad, so I have to find reasons to hate every David Ayer film. I didn't hate this film at all, but I think the direction was a bit sloppy. The writing by David Ayer is brilliant in this movie, but the direction, it's not the best, and it almost makes me feel like they shouldn't have done the found footage at all. There are other movies that do that shaky cam handheld style, but don't act like it's a found footage. That could have worked for this. Or just commit to it being that full-on, we're only going to use dash cams and body cams and whatnot of the cops. And I think there might even be other movies that's the case. I don't remember. And lastly, I'll just say on it, there are films that start off as found footage and then transition out of found footage and become filmed cinematically. That's also fine. But there has to be a clear break in transition for the rest of the film. District 9 is an example of that. But you can't just randomly throw in cinematically shot scenes with no explanation and then go back to the found footage. That's what doesn't make sense to me. We talked at the beginning of the month about Butterfly Kisses blending things so well. This didn't blend things well at all. So that's the biggest flaw for me with this film.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. That is probably the biggest flaw for this film. Just to point out a couple things that I really did like, the action in this movie, whether it was guns, just arguments, or just fighting or whatever it was. I felt like it was choreographed really well. It was all like, I will say that, like, I mean, the theatrical like moments of the movie where it wasn't like POV. I mean, it wasn't shot terribly or
No, yeah.
anything. There was some shaky cam moments, but uh, just the blending of it. But anyways, the action was pretty good in this film. I didn't have anything. I didn't have any problems with that. Like you said, the writing of the film was really great. Didn't have any problems with that. The story of like the story of what they go through and stuff. I can agree it is like a character piece on these two cops, but they do like there is like I'd say like towards the third act of the movie you kind of like understand what's going on behind the scenes, what like the two cops don't realize what's going on and what they're getting themselves into. And I did like that. There was some cheesy moments that I feel like they did throw in there for plot that I didn't really care for, but besides that, it was pretty solid. There wasn't any like plot holes or anything really. Um, but if you have, I'll let you say if you have any final things to say, and then
Yeah. I have one more positive than one more negative. So, for the positive, Jake Gyllenhaal is my favorite actor. Like, not one of my favorite actors. He is my favorite actor. If we ever decided to do a month solely on an actor, it would probably either be Jake Gyllenhaal or Leonardo DiCaprio, because those are two actors that have plenty of movies I still haven't seen. So he's my favorite actor, and he's just brilliant. Like, he's just excellent in this movie, like he is in most of his movies. And a lot of the complaints I just had get overshadowed by how good his performance is, because you're so caught up in his performance that you don't really care. Kind of like what you're saying. Even in those cinematic moments that make no logical sense, they're still shot fine, and the performances are so good you don't care as much. Michael Pena also does just an excellent job in the film. I know I already said the performances were good, so this isn't necessarily a new positive, but I just had to reinforce how good they were. And I mean, kudos to David Ayer. This is the second film now that he's written. This Training Day, which we did a little while ago, where he wrote the movie, and he writes it so well that it allows these performances to be excellent. Both cop performances too. So I don't know what that means, but as far as the negative, I'll go into this more in spoilers, but I do feel like I have to bring it up in the non-spoiler because it informs my overall thoughts on the movie. The ending of this movie pissed me off. And from the standpoint of the plot, it made me mad. From like a standpoint of a movie, like it made me mad, like this ending doesn't make sense for the movie I just watched. And then also literally like an actual thing they do in the movie actually really pissed me off. So I'll get into it in the spoiler section more, but that was a big flaw for me because one part of a movie shouldn't necessarily be more important than another part, but if you have a bad ending or an ending that makes me mad and leaves a sour taste in my mouth, yeah, that's going to affect me a little bit more than a bad beginning or a bad part in the middle. So that is why the film isn't necessarily ranked as high as it is the bulk of the movie would be for me. So I guess I'll just jump into my rating. I'm going to give End of Watch a 7 out of 10. Most of the film is a solid to strong 8 out of 10 for me, but the ending really brings it down for me, so I'll jump into that more. But still, a high recommendation, for sure. Definitely check out this movie if you haven't seen it. I had to rent it, but I'm sure you could find it streaming somewhere if you try hard enough. So I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to guess a few reasons, because there could be a few reasons why the ending made you feel the way that you felt, and there those few reasons that I'm thinking of is why I can't really decide how I feel about the ending of the movie. When this is my second time viewing it and getting to the end of the movie, I started to remember, how it ended, not scene for scene or anything like that, but just the general idea. And watching it again, I just didn't really know how I felt about it. If I didn't like how they ended it, or if I didn't really care, or if I thought that was the best way to end it, or whatever it was. I'm still undecided on that, but I would say the best parts of this movie are, the actors doing a great job, the writing of the movie, and just the intensity of it. Um, the POV, you could say it adds to it a little bit. Sometimes it takes away, so it's kind of even there. But I'm gonna give this movie a 6 out of 10.
Whew. Wow. Okay. You're surprising me with these scores this month. That's for sure. All right. So we are now going to jump into the spoiler section. If you have not seen End of Watch, we both recommend it, so go check it out if you want to before we jump into the spoilers, and then come back and listen or watch the rest of it if you need to. Here we go. So, should we just start with the ending since we both talked about that?
Yeah.
So first let's just recap what I'm talking about as far as the ending, and then you can add to that if there's more than that you're talking about. But for me, it's strictly the fact that they both get gunned down by the drug gang, and that whole scene was really good. It was very tense, and the part where he is trying to save Jake Gyllenhaal's character, and then you can hear like the guns cock or whatever. I forget the actual noise you hear, but then he turns around and the gang's there behind him, and I forget what they say, but they say something and then kill him. That was really well done. And it did suck to see, but I thought watching it, I'm like, so first from the movie standpoint, like I said, from a movie standpoint, I didn't think that made sense, because I'm like, how is this the ending of the movie? Like, I watched these two cops for 2 hours and then they both just get killed by a drug gang. Like, okay, like it seemed just so abrupt and a weird ending to the movie. But I even started to accept that, like, okay, this is a buddy cop movie. These two were through everything together. They died together. You know what I mean? It's like, if this is the ending, it kind of sucks, but okay, maybe I can understand the story they're telling. And then they show the funeral, and fucking Jake Gyllenhaal stands up at the funeral and is alive. And I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. And it's like, I have never felt bad for a fictional character because I felt that the fictional character was screwed over in their own movie. Like, it doesn't really make any sense, but it's like, I was like, wow, they really did Michael Peña's character so dirty. Like, if they're gonna kill them both, or if you're just going to kill Michael Peña, just kill Michael Peña, but why are you faking me out on the death of your main character, but then you actually kill his best friend? And then that's the end of the movie. Like, if there's no purpose to him still being alive, it's just like, oh, I guess he's alive, and now he's fucked up the rest of his life. I don't think he's going to be a cop anymore. Okay. Like, that's the ending. It just felt so weird, and it genuinely made me mad. I've never had a character being alive make me mad so much before.
Yeah, and then not only that, but being upset that Michael Peña's character died, and then that making you even more upset that he was dead. Like,
Yeah.
like usually it's like, oh, he died, like, oh, I'm pissed or I'm upset, but then something else is like, oh, now I'm really pissed that he's dead. Like, yeah, that's definitely like the main reason why I would have, like, if I didn't like the ending or however I felt. I'm still undecided on it. Maybe I'll be able to, come to terms and decide, how I feel about the ending of the movie. But um, really quick, I wanted to say, like, with Jake Gyllenhaal's, like, being alive, like, I could see some, just some kind of like subliminal reasoning for that. Well, I guess like a couple, and one is just like, that does happen. It's not like a crazy thing that, like, the like cop partners or partners of whatever, are both hurt or whatever, and one of them survives. They have survivor's guilt, and along with that, just the day-to-day lives that they live as cops or whatever it is, just puts a lot of stress and makes them depressed and stuff. And then this is obviously gonna haunt him for the rest of his life, and or maybe haunt him, but like you could say it was somewhat his fault or it wasn't or whatever it was. But there's definitely that. After that, another thing with that is in the a little bit earlier, like pretty much right after they go into that house of the fire, and he was like, the only reason I went in there is for you. You gotta help. You gotta like follow me into this, be a detective or whatever. And then also, uh, I believe it was at his wedding, like way after the wedding, they were just talking and stuff, and Michael Pena was like, if anything ever happened to you, like I would take care of your wife basically, and if you had a kid or whatever, like they would be taken care of. And so you kind of get the sense that like at least they both didn't die. Like he could still take care of his wife and his literally like newborn child. Um, so you kind of like, I mean, it doesn't really bring that up at all. It doesn't like give you like, oh yeah, he's gonna like take care of them. But if you, especially with my second time watching it, like, you kind of remember that and you're like, oh, like at least they were best friends. I don't know if it was just in the police academy or what it was, but they were best friends, and at least Michael Pena's like wife in the movie isn't just going to be completely alone. She's going to have his best friend who survived. So, and whether or not you know, she tells him or he tells her that like it was kind of his fault or whatever it was. Um, because like when they were right before he got shot, when Jake Gyllenhaal got shot, he was like, "Don't tell her I fucked up. Like, don't tell my wife I fucked up."
Yeah.
Um, but and then so another reason with the ending of the movie, one thing I did like is when they were uh running away and they like kind of got out of the apartment complex and they were hopping fences and there was just a dude with a shotgun in the car and he just poof, and he's like, come on, he's like, oh my god, I think he killed him, and they just like see a couple guys and they shoot him down, and then there's the last one who obviously shoots Jake Gyllenhaal. I thought that was like probably the best action scene, like from the apartment complex to when they got shot. But that that whole sequence where they got shot and then the cartel people got shot, that was pretty goofy to me. Like that was a little cheesy. Like, and they were like, the cartel was like, "Come on, motherfuckers!" and they all just get shot. It kind of gave me at first before the cartel got shot and stuff. It kind of gave me a sense almost of like Training Day, and it seemed like for a second. I don't know if you felt this, but like when they were like, "Where the fuck is the cavalry? Like, where are all the other cops?" I got a sense that like I was like, oh, like the cops aren't showing up. Like somebody, the sheriff or whoever it is, like they know that they got themselves into some messy situation and they don't want any part of it. They'll come an hour later and find their dead bodies. And then obviously right after they get shot down, the cops show up. So you're like, oh, well, I guess that wasn't the case. They were just lost or didn't know where they were. Which is also, reasonable. It wasn't like, oh, there's no way they didn't know where they were. They were literally hopping back fences and running away. So they weren't going to know exactly where they were. Their walkie-talkies weren't working and all that stuff. So, but I did like that little bit of like suspense of like, are the cops not showing up? Like, are they stranded basically? So I thought that was pretty cool.
And honestly, I mean, the film doesn't give you any reason by the end to make you think or confirm that that is the case, but I also got that sense, and the film kind of leaves it open and unanswered to the point of, why would they put that in the movie? Like, why would Michael Pena's character say, where are they, and they don't show up, and then they pull around the corner right after they get shot a bunch of times? Like, it is a little bit suspect. And not saying, like, the entire department's in on it or anything. I'm just saying, like, maybe there were some forces, there's someone corrupt, or there's someone that knew, like, hey, they made someone really big, really mad, they need to die. Which, again, even if that was a possibility, then makes Jake Gyllenhaal surviving at the end that much more confusing, because the guy tells the gang they need to kill these two cops. Do you think that guy, I know the gang was killed too, but do you think whoever this big higher up guy is, he's just gonna not find out that Jake Gyllenhaal is alive? Yeah, either not find out that he's alive or find out he's alive and just like retired and disabled now and is just like, all right, whatever. Like, no, he's going to still probably want him dead. So it was just this weird open ending part of it. The whole ending of the movie I thought was just not well done, and I feel like it was more so, how do we end this movie in a crazy manner? And I did get the sense the whole time, the way, like you talked about, that Michael Pena's character was like, I'll take care of your family if you're, like, they kept hinting at Jake Gyllenhaal dying to the point where I did start to think, oh, it's going to be Michael Pena that dies. Like, they keep hinting that this main character, Jake Gyllenhaal, is going to die, but actually it's Michael Pena, the guy that you thought was going to be fine. And I would have been okay with that. It could have been done well, but to do it in the way they did it, which is what I felt was so shitty. And again, it's weird to like think of it in that sense of like, this movie is a fake movie that is written by someone, and I'm mad at the person that wrote it for the way they wrote the events. Like, it's such a weird criticism, but I don't know, it just hit me in such an odd way that I felt almost disrespected by the movie. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like, a movie makes you love a character and then it kills that character. That can work a lot of the time, but the way that they did it's almost like like Dexter or something, in the way that some of the characters were handled in that, or How I Met Your Mother. People hated the ending of that show. It's like, you can kill characters, but you still you have to respect the characters you're killing. And I felt it was just a spit in the face of that character, the way they pulled that off at the end of the film. So that was mostly what I hated about it. I don't really have much else to say about it, because I feel like, there are some things that are really strong. I got really strong emotions from me, like Jake Gyllenhaal's performance I really strongly enjoyed. The ending I really strongly hated, and there wasn't a lot that was just like in the middle. The rest of it was just pretty good. I thought that Anna Kendrick and Jake Gyllenhaal's like relationship was fine. I honestly really thought Michael Pena's relationship with his wife, Gabby, again played by Natalie Martinez, I liked theirs better. I thought it was, they had some funny moments and stuff when they were allowed to be on screen. So the rest of it was pretty good. I don't really have anything specific to talk about.
I just have two more things that I can think of. Is one, more of just kind of like a theory sort of thing, is like, we've both said that, like, we might have enjoyed the ending better if they both would have just died and stuff. And that kind of makes you think of, like, with Jake Gyllenhaal's character, like, if he were to have survivor's guilt and he would just like, I wish we would have both just died, or I wish I would have just died. But like, we kind of feel the same way in this movie. And although it's like just a theatrical stuff, but it's just thinking about it, it is kind of like a weird similarity that like his character could also be feeling the same thing, which is pretty interesting. Not sure if that's just like, if that was like any sort of thought in David Ayer's mind that like that's like my hint to the end of the movie or whatever, but that could be interesting. But it's like I can't give any like credit to him because I don't know if that's like what he meant, But, and then the other thing, which I brought up in the non-spoilers, was I can't think of any other points, because, again, they did throw that, like, shaky cam, just straight-up theatrical camera in the movie as well. But there was a scene when they were in that apartment complex, and the three gang members were, like, running up the stairs or whatever with their weapons. And the girl that was part of that gang group or whatever was holding, like, either a pistol or like an AK, and holding a handy cam. She was literally holding a camera in the other hand. I'm like, why is she holding a camera? I don't think we've even seen her point of view, unless it was when they were shooting guns, which like, she's not holding a camera.
Yeah.
Like, is she like, they shoot, and then when they put their guns down, they run to the next floor. She's like, all right, got to start recording again. Like, yeah. When I saw her holding a camera, I was just like, what?
It's literally like
that
they were just filming the scene, and someone on set was like, here, David wants someone to hold a camera to make it more realistic. Like, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, and that even, like, it brings up a thing that I didn't even think about, but, like, they're literally filming it from a third-person point of view of her holding a camera. Like, it's not from her point of view. Like, it's just so messed up.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. That was the sloppiest part, for sure. Again, I still gave it a positive rating, and so did you. Again, I think that the performances, the relationships in the movie, it overcame a lot of that stuff. But above all that, I can forgive a lot of the sloppiness. I really can't forgive the ending, though. it really makes me think I'll never watch the movie again because I don't want to go through that again. You know what I mean? It's like I might even. I
And
don't
just
know.
point out more of the sloppy camera work.
Yeah, and there were a lot of scenes that were pretty emotional, and like when they find all the human trafficking, or when they find the babies tied up in the closet, like it was really sad, and like I don't know if I want to
Or the
even.
house fire.
Yeah, that was intense, dude. I
That,
thought I thought Michael
the house
Pena might
fire
die
was
there.
intense. Yeah, it was intense, but like, and then when they get out and like they can't see and they're coughing and they're like freaking out, like it's like the intensity, like was the same when they were in this fire about to die and after they got out.
Yeah,
Like usually they like the characters get out of the house that's on fire and it's like, oh my God, they're safe, but they're like, we're fucking dying, we can't
yeah.
see. And they're like trying to give the firefighters a like, calm down, bro, and they're like, get the fuck away
Yeah,
from
yeah,
me.
yeah. Well, that was also a great example of their friendship. You know, Jake Gyllenhaal, literally blinded, like goes and like is feeling around to find Michael Pena, and he's like shoving the EMTs away, and he's like, "Get away from him!" Like he's like they just care about each other. You know, it was a really that was one of my favorite scenes as well. But yeah, it was what I was trying to say was like they're good scenes, but some of them are just so like gritty and sad that it's almost it's kind of like a way different movie, but it brings to mind like Midsummer. Midsummer is an extremely well done film. I don't think I ever want to watch it again though. You know what I mean? So a lot of people would disagree with me on that, but that's kind of how I felt here as far as I don't want to be reminded
Yeah.
how shitty some parts of the world are.
And I think if I could just sum up like the ending of the movie in like one sentence, I'd just say like the ending of the movie was a rough draft that they ended up just filming for the end.
Yeah, that's good. And I also just did want to say, the film gave me vibes of if you ever wondered what Grand Theft Auto would be if you played the cops and like not like a corrupt cop or a shit, but like just an actual like cop. Yeah, this movie was that I felt like, so that was pretty fun. But yeah, so I think that's it. So now we are actually not done here with this episode. We are going to rank all four of the films we talked about this month. So there was this film, End of Watch. We started the month with Butterfly Kisses. We also talked about Unfriended, and then the film The Bay. So we're going to rank those four movies now. And then I don't think we have our theme picked out for next week. So just join us next week and you'll find out what our theme and movie is. But all right, so Devin, do you want to go first with your number 4, or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first with my number 4.
Okay.
So just to be clear, I got a little confused last time, but I'll say my number 4. You say
4
4
and
3.
3.
I say 2-1, and then you say 2-1.
Well, you would have to say your 3 too.
I
And
would
then
also do my 3. So 4-3, 4-3, 2-1, 2-1.
no, so you're gonna say your 4, and that's it. And then I'm gonna say my 4 and my 3. So like when it comes to you, you say what the next one is. So like you say your 4, I'll do 4 and then 3, and then you would do 3 and then 2, and then I would do 2 and then 1, and then you would do your 1.
Okay.
It's a little bit confusing, but it's
All
the
right.
easiest way to go back and forth rather than, you know.
Okay. Yeah. So my number 4 place is going to be Unfriended. And on a list of different POV movies, I could potentially see this maybe bumping up to third place. But with these 4 movies that we ranked for this month in this theme, it's without a doubt sitting at number 4. Unfortunately, it just doesn't compare to any of these other movies. I enjoyed some aspects of it, but it doesn't pale in comparison to what I didn't enjoy about the film.
Yeah, my number 4 is going to be Unfriended also. I think that there are things about Unfriended that I enjoyed, and there are parts of it that surprised me. Overall, it's the only film of the 4 that I wouldn't recommend. So that's going to be my number 4. My number 3, I'm kind of struggling with my number 3 and my number 2, which ones I want to go with. But I think just based on... This is always the trap I fall in. Do I base it on what I personally liked more, or based on what I think is the better movie? That's always I go back and forth on. I think for this particular theme, I am going to go with what I think is objectively probably the better movie. So for number 3, I'm going to put The Bay. I really, really liked The Bay. But at the end of the day, it's a pretty cheaply made film. And, I mean, you talk about low budget. Low budget works with found footage, but The Bay is low budget. That's for sure. So that's going to be my number 3. And there are flaws with it I have too, but you can listen to the episode if you want to hear more on that. But I did definitely enjoy it.
Yeah, so my number 3 is going to be The Bay as well. Like you said, it is low budget. There isn't a lot of impressive, I would say, like theatrical or like aspects to it. I'm trying to think of the words, like not really CGI, but just like big budget things that you would enjoy in a movie. Although I did feel like they tried really hard, and I did like the premise of the film. And I felt like it didn't rush things. It didn't drag at any points, and I sat through and watched it, and I had a fine time watching it.
And your number 2?
So my number 2 is going to be End of Watch, and this one was a little tricky for me because I felt like I would recommend. I would recommend. I almost said Overwatch.
Would you recommend Overwatch? That's a good question.
I have never played it, so just. But yeah, I feel like I would recommend End of Watch over Butterfly Kisses. But like you were saying, I feel like I just liked Butterfly Kisses a lot more personally than End of Watch. So that's why I give End of Watch number 2.
All right, so I mean, you kind of gave it away there as well with the number 1. We're gonna have the same exact list. So my number 2 is End of Watch as well. There are things about The Bay that I enjoyed, in some ways more than End of Watch, but I just have to admit that End of Watch not only is the better made film, but it's also Jake Gyllenhaal's performance is better than anything in The Bay, so that's what beats it out at the number 2 spot. However, obviously, in this episode, I already talked about the many flaws I had with End of Watch as well, so that's why number 1 is Butterfly Kisses. There's nothing about Butterfly Kisses that I disliked to the point of subtracting points, although it's not an amazing film or one that, I gave a 10 out of 10 or anything. It was by far my favorite of the films we watched this month.
Yeah, one thing that I don't think I said on our review of Butterfly Kisses, but I'm going to be putting it at number 1, simply because I really don't think you can ask for much more in a found footage POV film. I think this really, doesn't mess things up too much. It's not really lacking too much, and I just think it really. Like you said before, it really is successful in what it's trying to do, and it really completes that in the movie.
Yeah, I agree. And it brings up just the broader point of this theme that we did this month, and the two main I don't want to say problems, but the two main things that I always go back and forth on with this podcast that we've been doing so far this year, that kind of sometimes I wish that sometimes we could do more movies for each theme, because I feel like with each theme, 4 movies is such a limited sample size, and it's hard. So many movies get left out that I still want to watch and possibly talk about, but just for the sake of time, we can't do 10 movies for each theme, because I don't want to spend 2 to 3 months on every theme, and I don't want to do 2 movies per episode or whatever. Like, I just don't have the time for that. So, and in that respect, sometimes I feel like there's a lot left on the table with certain themes, and with this one, for sure, there are ones definitely left on the table that I want to check out. And I'm sure I will, and we could always do this theme again down the road, but probably, we're definitely not doing any repeat themes for at least a while. And then the second thing is, I always, I struggle. There are so many found footage movies that I absolutely love, that I would love to come on here and talk about for an hour. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, Grave Encounters is one of my favorites, that, but, films like
District 9 would probably be one of my favorites.
Yeah, District 9. Films like Project X isn't my favorite, but that's one I would like to talk about. Or films, Chronicle is one of my favorite found footage movies. Cloverfield had a huge impact on me, when it comes to loving movies. And there's so many out there that I really love, but I've already seen them. And not only have I already seen them once a long time ago, but I've seen a lot of those I just named multiple times. And even though sometimes we do pick movies that one of us has seen and the other one hasn't, the point of the podcast is to watch more movies. So sometimes I really got to keep that in mind and be like, I'm not doing this to talk about my favorite movies. I'm doing this to watch more of them. So, but this month in particular, this theme in particular, really got me in both of those areas. Really wanting to talk about some of my favorite found footage movies, and then also just wanting to watch and talk about so many more within this genre. I think in the 21st century, this is probably the biggest explosion any genre has had. Like, found footage didn't really exist before like 1999 or whenever the Blair Witch Project came out. And then since the beginning of the 21st century, it has exploded in so many different ways. So there's just so many films inside of this genre that are interesting, and that's why I really enjoy a lot of the movies in this genre, even though it gets flack sometimes and it's not really thought of as the most high class cinematic type of film. There's a lot of them that I really like.
Well, yeah, and one thing I just want to say that directly bounces off that, and just to put it on the record, so in case I forget to write it down or something. But I think interesting theme that we could do would be just picking movies that we have already watched, and we could just spend, even if it's not a month or just a couple episodes, but have an episode be just us talking about like 2 to 4 of our favorite movies, have a theme for each episode maybe, and just be able to like delve into some of our favorite movies for like 15 to 20 minutes. I think would be a good way of kind of like, just being able to talk about that without having to spend a month on a certain theme, and we could have more than 4 movies in a month. Not exactly sure how that would work out or something, but just because you brought that up, I think that might be a good idea that we could do in the future. But on that subject, I do want to say, as we wrap up the episode, you can follow us on our social medias. You can follow me at Devon Smile on Twitter, and you can follow me at day.von on TikTok. And we don't have a theme picked out for October, but as soon as we do, I'll post it on my Twitter. I might even, I'll probably be posting clips from our podcast on my TikTok, and I might put in there what we're doing. So if you want to know what we're doing for next month, just make sure you follow us on there, and probably post the theme and updates. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, you can follow me at Josh Movie Guy on TikTok. That's really it, for me. You can check out some of my other podcasts. If you watch or listen to this podcast audio version on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you probably notice it says that the artist or the author of the podcast is Hooligan Radio. That's because I have a main pop culture centered podcast called Hooligan Radio with 2 other friends, where we talk about movies, but also gaming and true crime, just a whole bunch of other stuff. And then I also have a sports podcast, Hot Takes on the Lake. If you just so happen to be in the Cleveland area and are a Cleveland Browns fan, you can check that one out as well. So that's really it for me. Thanks everyone for joining us this week, and we hope we've inspired.
And really quick, not sure if you mentioned it, but the YouTube.
Yeah, well, you might be watching this on the YouTube. If you're not, if you're listening, then you can check this out on YouTube as well at Watch More Movies Podcast.
All right, well, sorry to cut you off.
That's right.
Thanks for listening, or thanks for watching. Go ahead and follow us on any of there if you want to keep up to date with this podcast or others. And as always, we hope we inspire you to watch more movies as well. It's been Devon and Josh. We'll see you next month.